Hi everyone, welcome to another exciting comics loving edition of Words, Images, and Worlds. I am indeed excited because on this episode I am delighted to be talking with comics creator Craig Rousseau. Craig, thank you for jumping in and joining and bringing a lovely drafting table with you and all sorts of interesting
Yeah.
things.
Well, thank you for having me.
My pleasure. I am going to mention a couple of titles, Batman Beyond and the Batman animated series work being, of course, one of those first that comes to mind. Batman 66, Future Quest. The one that's very fun to say is Panther. Panther.
Panther.
Yeah. Young Hellboy, as well as the Perhapanauts, which is also fun to say.
And you did it right. And there's so many people that really just struggle over that. And it was really a joke that Todd, there was a song, I think it might have been Cake. There was a lyric that was perhaps, 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 or not. And as they were saying it, he said, that's a really kind of a catchy word, perhaps or not.
Uh-huh,
Uh,
uh-huh.
so, so it stuck.
Well, I'm glad I nailed it. Glad I got that.
Yeah.
I'm also a cake fan, so that might be part of it.
Good
Uh,
taste.
thank you, thank you. So how did you decide initially, and we'll sort of circle back to talk about some of the creating, but how did you decide that comics was the space that you wanted to be in and you wanted to create in?
You know, even as far back as a kid, sitting around reading cartoon comic books and watching Saturday morning cartoons, watching Super Friends, I had an affinity for superheroes,
Hmm.
and my friends and I would sit around the front steps and tracing drawings from comic books, and my dad had worked as an illustrator for the Navy, and he was doing more technical illustration, but he had a lot of art supplies around the house, and he was always encouraging. So uh, my friend will still talk to this day about this piece of my dad would cut these plexi Lexan boards that we could bring and draw anywhere. So we would just sit and draw, and he'd bring home paper, and we would just go through reams of paper drawing, copying old comic books that we found. And
Hmm.
from that point on, it was just, I wanted to draw for a living.
Nice, nice. Love that. Yeah, it sounds like it was in the blood, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Now, as far as your style and approach, how did that develop? Is that something that has changed over time?
Yeah, I mean, I think that every artist who constantly explores should be developing for sure.
Hmm.
When I got into comics and I was reading it in the '90s and in college, uh, I was reading at that point. I was looking at a lot of Vertigo, and I thought that'd be kind of a fun place to be. I think they're doing some really interesting storytelling and design work, and it was more than just superhero stuff.
Hmm.
And that's originally what my first samples were, but they were quirky. And then one of the editors I showed them to was the one who uh, ended up getting me work on Impulse, which is absolutely not Vertigo.
Hmm.
So I looked at what Umberto was doing, and I really kind of tried to emulate what he was doing, and got a lot more cartoony with my style. And then right around that time is when the Batman cartoon was on,
Hmm. Hmm.
and I loved everything that Bruce Timm was doing. And when I got offered work on those books, it was a more of a simplification of my style, and that's where it went for several years. So yeah.
Nice, nice. Yeah. No, I mentioned a couple of titles that cover just a small part of what you've done, but any collaborations, experiences, you mentioned Todd DeZago, anything that you'd like to share about that?
Yeah, I mean, like, excuse me. The irony of that one was that Todd and I became friends going to conventions together, and we'd go to the Heroes Convention in Charlotte,
Hmm.
and we'd
Hmm.
actually spend a lot of time with his partner Mike Ringo at the time. And we'd spend a couple of days at his house before the show. We'd drive down, and it became a big thing. And we kept talking about wanting to work together. And I was working on Impulse, and at that time I had been on the book for about 2 years, and I said, I think I'm going to quit. I think I'm done. And I called the editor to talk to them, and they said, this is perfect timing because we were bringing a new team in anyway, so you were going to get fired. Uh, So there was no problem there. And then immediately after that, I got a phone call from Todd saying that we're going to work together. I'm the new writer on Impulse. I said, funny, no, we're not working together, but we really should. And that's when we started talking about what we both liked. And we did a Tello story together, which was his other book with Michael Ringo. And
Mhm.
then we came up with the Perhapanauts over the course of a couple of weeks, and we've just been getting back to it every chance we get. So we've been working on that on and off for close to 20 years.
Wow, nice, nice.
And then I, I I know you've had Rich on your show.
Hmm.
Rich and I have been friends for about that same amount of time. We met at a local show here in New England, and I would just show him stuff that I was doing. And randomly, I had done a pinup for a yearbook at a convention in Seattle, and it was the theme I think was like monsters and dames. And I did this weird little alien monkey thing and a jungle girl, and he looked at it and asked if there was any kind of story there, and I really didn't have one. And then the next day he came back and said, "This is what I'm thinking," and he had the whole thing mapped out. And so we put together Kyra Alien Jungle Girl, and that's been a lot of fun. So
Hmm.
I've had a couple of good working relationships with writers, and it's been a lot of back and forth.
Yeah, yeah. Anything you'd like to say as far as the creative vision of where you'd like to go next and what's sort of on the horizon?
Right now, after working on a couple of miniseries with Tom Snagowski on the Young Hellboy, which has been one of the latest books I've been working on,
Hmm.
Tom and I were pitching another Young Hellboy book, and then we said, well, what if we did this instead? What if we did this as well? And we were putting together another book, another creator-owned book that we're going to start working on soon, and there should be more news about that later this year, I think. And Tom's another guy who just says, let's throw some crazy crap at the story and see what happens. Like the more outrageous, the better. And that's what we love about comics is that it is an incredibly visual medium and an incredibly imaginative medium. You can do whatever you want. You don't not limited by a budget or reality really.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
and Tom and I are on the same wavelength about that. So that's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah, I love the sort of the trajectory you mentioned of you started watching cartoons and now you've kind of had these experiences of working on books that kind of work in that style as well. Young Hellboy takes that world of Mike Mignola and really transports it to that sort of all ages friendly, almost kind of approach.
mhm.
So really kind of interesting how that seems to be a thread in your story.
Yeah, it absolutely has been. I think that I mean, and it wasn't really where I thought I'd go, but I really enjoy telling stories that anyone can read and
Hmm. Hmm.
everyone should read, and that's actually part of the pitch with the book with Todd is we keep thinking, wouldn't this be a great cartoon? What could we do that would feel like a cartoon? And the same thing with the book that Tom and I were doing. Not that we're pitching it as a cartoon, but like we both watched those Hanna-Barbera action adventure shows, the Johnny Quest and all that kind of stuff. And like
Hmm.
that's the kind of stuff that we want to do. So we're bringing that into our storytelling.
Nice, nice. And you mentioned Bruce Timm. It's hard for me to think about Bruce Timm and not also think about Alex Toth and some of those designs. So, and love how I pick up some of those flavors in your work as well.
Absolutely. And I think like that was the big thing is when you're doing those animated books like Batman Adventures and Batman Beyond, you're
Hmm.
basing it on style guides that were designed by these guys. And really it's a minimal style. It's a minimalism of what can I do with as little lines as possible.
Hmm.
And that still carries through today, where even though I'm putting more details on top of it, I've really gotten to the point where I simplify all my storytelling where every line has to have a reason. That's why it's on the page. Like
Yeah.
I look at some guys and I marvel when they just can sit and throw hundreds of lines down and they all work. Where I'll sit for about 5 minutes and go, well, maybe this will be the right line, or maybe this one will be the right line. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of that comes back to that's simple storytelling.
Mm-hmm. And peeking over your shoulder, I'm also guessing that you're a person who enjoys working in traditional forms, traditional media as well.
I do. I like being able to put that ink on paper. And what I'll do now is I'll work digitally. I've got a Cintiq here where I can do a lot of my layouts and I can do a lot of my digital pencils, and I can get my notes back from my editors, and then I'll print that out on Bristol, and I'll work over there and I'll ink it traditionally.
Nice, nice. Love the merging of styles there, the digital, the print. Love that. Yeah.
Yeah, and it really is so much easier when the editor will say, "Well, I need you to leave more room for that person to speak," as opposed to, "Oh crap, now I've got to erase it and redraw everything." I'll just click, reduce by 10%. Boom, done.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
then I still have the physical artwork when I'm done. I like being able to create on paper and have that tactile feel.
hmm hmm Yeah, you get the convenience as well as the tactile, the aesthetics, and the efficiency. That's a great pairing. Yeah. Well, I think I have one more official question, which has just a couple of parts. So you mentioned Heroes Con. Always glad
Okay.
to give folks the space to talk about places where they like to connect with readers, and then anything that you'd like to mention as far as the online spaces as well that folks can follow.
Yeah, I have a website. It's craigrousseau.com where I update it sporadically, but it will have a list of what conventions I'll be at. Most of them are New England area shows, but I'll be in Heroes in June, and I'll be out in Portland, Oregon at Rose City in the fall, I guess. And there's a few other shows that I've lined up. I'm on a lot of the social media, Twitter, Blue Sky, Facebook,
All the things, all
all
of
the
the social
things.
media
Yeah.
threads. Yeah. Well, Craig, I will say thank you for your time. Did we miss anything that you want to make sure to share before we close?
You know what? We have the Perhapanauts.com. That's our website. We've got stuff
Hmm
there as well. We got a newsletter we're trying to update with stuff about that book and, stuff that I do, stuff that Todd does. But again, social media, trying to keep it up to date and let folks know what's going on. Busy working on stuff that hopefully will be out later this year or next year for sure.
Awesome, awesome. Well, looking forward to that. Maybe I will see you at Heroes, and glad to chat anytime as you're working on projects.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.